Good morning, everybody out there in Facebook land. So I wanted to first give you a little tiny update overnight, because overnight is just as relevant as during the day, because that's also when your inner children, your unresolved issues do get worked out. I actually had a real weird dream about losing somebody's cat that I was friends with, a couple, for a few years. And it was just weird. It was just the weirdest thing. And also, right before that dream, my dog was coughing, like coughing. And she actually was up around 1 a.m. this morning. And just coughing and sneezing. She didn't have any seizures or anything, but she was coughing and sneezing and just doing whatever she does when her body is releasing stuff and going through those reparations overnight. So overnight is a flurry of activity. Some people survive the night, other people don't. And other people don't even feel the night because they're under the influence of cannabis or other types of heavy hormonal replacement therapy like melatonin. And so I'm really aware of what's going on overnight, whether I'm blowing my nose really hard or I'm up with my dog who has to use the restroom. And I do take her out. She woke up with me this morning. My husband had to go to work, and I was up to see him off, and then took a shower, did all my whatever I had to do, and she actually came downstairs, didn't pee upstairs like she would if she had problems holding it in because of stuff. And I made it just, in time for her not to think that I'm not going to come down and then she'll pee on the floor somewhere, which I don't worry about, because if I'm not down here and she doesn't have a door to open, then she'll have to do it wherever she has to do it. But I made it downstairs and she made it outside, and that was awesome. So I know she doesn't purposely pee on the floor upstairs. It's sometimes when she just can't hold it in because of the frequencies, the things that are going on within her system that makes her release as soon as it needs to. And so the most extreme is when she has seizures and pees in the bed. Hasn't done that in the last couple of days. And the most, non-extreme is when she actually goes outside under my watch, because I have to open the door for her. So frequencies and pandemics. So now you have to understand why the difference between the pandemics of cold and flu season and before COVID-19 and the pandemics, cold and flu season and allergy season. What's the difference between those seasons and then what's going on today? Well, it's frequencies. Yeah, you're any kind of aggressive virus, like seriously aggressive virus, but what is a virus? See, this is the thing that I've now figured out how to explain viruses, because people are always demonizing viruses. But viruses are the body's immune defense systems. It's a programming that reacts to an aggressive antibiotic that it must fight and upgrade to. And then the body releases a little data package that has that in it, plus then every other biomarker that's within your DNA. And so when you have such vast amount of information in something like a mucus ball or spittle protein or whatever, and then somebody else gets that and all the conditions could be right, and then they suffer some kind of condition, that could lead to death, or that could lead to just like a little bit of a cold, or that could just incubate and stay dormant for however long. And that's just all relative to predisposed issues. And so that's been happening for years. And that's why we have allergy season and cold and flu season. But what's the difference between that and now? It's the frequencies. Remember, they told you climate change. Now, who is doing the climate change and why? It doesn't even matter. It's irrelevant, because climate change is climate change. You have a bunch of humans, and they could just be doing their job and going to work and doing what they've been trained to do. And then you see the heat, the rising of the heat, the methane from animals and humans releasing. We're doing the best we can to process that so it doesn't get released in the atmosphere and totally poison it. But then, as you keep looking, as models keep projecting that if you have so many people by a certain time, what that's going to do to the atmosphere, then there are those that are going to preempt what would have happened maybe 100 years from now that could develop all-out extinction. And so they preempt it and do a type of controlled type of raising of the atmosphere or heating up the atmosphere then they can control how much of the decline happens and give people opportunities and options to redirect. And that is a strategy. That is science. That is engineering. That is social sciences. That's everything that you study in the colleges of experimentation, which aren't bad, and they have their place, and people have talked about them. I've had my issues with them, but they're double-edged. It's a great thing, and it also be a scourge if you don't understand why they're doing it and you are obsessed with making them wrong. Okay? And so frequencies in the atmosphere is the difference between a small pandemic like a cold and flu season and allergy season and an all-out aggressive pandemic. So I was watching a video last night on Netflix called, something to do with anthrax, the shadow of 9/11. Of course, we just had the whole 9/11 anniversary, and I had my own words about 9/11 and then how that catapulted me into the conspiracy world. Though I learned about Loose Change, which was one of the first documentaries about the conspiracy of 9/11 and who did it, who done it, and all that. And that was introduced to me back in like 2004, 2005. Okay? Or actually 2005, 2006. Because I was going to a night school called Chapman over there in Folsom, California. And one of my professors was the one that introduced that conspiracy, that movie, Loose Change. He said, don't say anything at all. Don't dispute it. I just want to drop this seed for all of you guys. And I'm like, why is a professor at Chapman University, Les, in a satellite campus for an adult school dropping conspiracy theories like that? And so where I learned the actual conspiracy theory originally, it wasn't from Alex Jones, which I know I've talked so much about Alex Jones. No, it was from actually a professor at Chapman University. But I didn't think anything too of it, because I had too many things going on. So I watched the movie, I'm like, okay, all right, that's a theory or something. I don't even know what. It didn't really hit me hard, but it was a seed that was planted. So a seed that's planted, and it's a memory that was burrowed underneath that finally came out and came to fruition. Then when my husband and I got together in 2011. Okay, 2010, 2011. And so anyways, why did I go down on that tangent? Because you don't know, here's the thing. Well, yeah, the whole anthrax thing, and then the whole 9/11. So the anthrax thing, then that happened, and I've forgotten all about the anthrax situation. And, well, I remembered it now and watching Netflix, and they were talking about the scientist who was involved with it somehow, and he was tasting, and I was watching it kind of like actively and inactively, but he tasting metal taste coming out of his mouth, had all these different symptoms. But why wasn't there a pandemic with that anthrax? Why was the anthrax only localized with those, with the people that were involved with it? It didn't go any further than that. It didn't have like a whole pandemic. Well, there's a lot of factors that develop pandemics, and not only frequencies and climate change, but then you're taking those different bacterias and you're hybridizing them with other things. All right, because anthrax is a bacteria by itself. When it's hybridized, let's say you take a bacteria and you hybridize it with something like COVID or anything else out there. I'm just putting a speculation out there. Then you can develop something really aggressive that's already has a familiarity in the population, because we all had some form of COVID. And so then that's how you can develop an aggressive antibiotic that can be so strong in one side of the world and then make its way out to the rest of the world, but it might lose its strength because it's gone through so many people, but then it picks up again because of so many other factors. And so this is then where you can see how pandemics start, is from antibiotics, and there's initial like ground zero that is developed that is so new to the population, and then it makes its way through, and then it's just all the different mutations and variations. Okay, and so, we're in an amazing evolutionary time where the strong are going to really be strong and develop their strength and resilience against all of this stuff, and still assimilate and still produce and find ways to innovate, and there's going to be those that will deal with what's going on, and they won't deal with it well, and they'll fail to assimilate. And so many of you are in different places. I know that at some point with the JJ world, some people are going to be at places where the JJ doesn't work as the CURE, because you now have to finally evolve. You can't be under the influence of a cure, not in this environment. Others of you, the JJ will give you some, period of relief. And I know that you're going to honor it and love it and give it accolades. I'm not really putting too many testimonies on my Facebook. Anyone really just honoring the J juice or saying it's an amazing thing, it gave me this, this, and that. I appreciate that you're acknowledging that it has given you a period of relief, but we don't want to go there and stay there. That was a couple years ago, and that's fine. I mean, it gave me relief a few years ago before the COVID-19, but that was not where I needed to stay. I needed to move on from that. Some of you are still in that place where the JJ is amazing and it's doing wonders for you because you were suffering before and now you're not. But remember, this is just a very small window of equilibrium that is going to be fleeting, and you're going to have to feel the issues and pain and deal with it. It's like being in the eye of the storm. The whole feelings of a little bit of equilibrium on the J juice is like being in the eye of the storm. It'll be calm in the middle of it, but there is still shit swirling around in your system that eventually you're going to have to deal with. But you happen to be right in the middle, the eye of the storm. And that's a period of peace, and you're watching things just swirl around you, just like those hurricane chasers, okay? And so enjoy that moment of peace. Enjoy the moment where you can go brush your teeth. Enjoy the moment of where you feel like you're a person again for a minute. You're not suffering, okay? Enjoy the moment, but don't live in that moment forever. You're going to have to then deal with the other side of the wall. You're going to have to hit that wall and penetrate it and deal with the issues that are still lurking within your genetic line. Okay? That's the most important. You don't want to live in being cured and being so happy that something gave you relief, because let me tell you, it'll be short-lived. And then you're going to chase that dragon. That's what happens to drug addicts that get that major high, is that's the only time they get that major amazing high. This is what I've heard. It makes sense. And so they're chasing that dragon the rest of their life. They cannot get that first initial high, because the first time you take any kind of DRUG, that could be really, like, I don't say psychedelic, but what people have said about COCAINE is that, yeah, it's so amazing the first time, or METH. It's so amazing the first time, and then they try to go and replicate that first time, that first experience, and it can't be, but they keep chasing that. I don't want you guys to chase that dragon of being cured. You're going to have to deal with every single thing. And if you have Neanderthal blood in you, or DNA in you, if you have a lot of the more of the earlier hominid DNA within you, you're going to have to deal with that, and that's going to have to upgrade. Okay? That might be the issue with a lot of the population, is that there's a lot of certain hominids DNA programming in their body, and we have a virus that is working through a population that is not doesn't have that much DNA like that in it, so they're able to upgrade. But those that have a lot of that DNA that is not going to assimilate well to that, well, they're going to feel the issues, and then they're going to keep using the antibiotics and keep stopping the energy of upgrading, and that's how the system will destroy you by your own hand. And that's why you cannot be using antibiotics or any cures out there. You have to face the issues. But I know you need the relief, so I get that whole balance, and I have to be very careful how I characterize the JJ world and the JJ juice. I mean, I don't want people to suffer indefinitely, and I don't want them to be cured indefinitely. There must be a balance, and you live in a very diverse world, which means you're going to have to face everything under the sun. Okay? And so Friedrich Nietzsche understood the power of resilience and a certain amount of suffering. All right? And so climate change contributes to the fast replication, whether it's someone inducing it purposely or it's just because it's a byproduct of humanity doing what they do. It doesn't even matter why. It's a matter of that you have to deal with this. Okay? And so I'm sure that there's been a lot of different beta testing of all the things that we're experiencing today. Because, again, like anything, bacteria, any new bacteria that is not familiarized with the general population is going to cause a major evolutionary upgrade. To where some people, would pass away, just like that anthrax scare or the anthrax stuff. It really upset that person's homeostasis. So I looked up anthrax, and it may seem antibiotic, but no, it's bacteria. It's a bacteria that really just evolved people so fast and so aggressively that their body didn't have time to respond, or the body had time to respond, but the body did not have enough time to release, because back then, of course, we didn't have the high frequencies. People's bodies were just at a specific cured state, and that was too much of a frequency within their body to deal with. Okay, and so they passed away from that. But why didn't it transfer to somebody else? Well, the frequencies weren't as aggressive, and I'm sure they contained the body. I mean, but like anything, science has a way to develop an amazing innovation that could help evolve populations, whether they want to or not. Science is about evolving people, but not everybody survives evolution. Okay? And that's the downside of science. That's the side that I've been having trouble with the last couple weeks, is that even though science evolves people and gets them to another level of advancement, science also releases the shaft. And then you have to be the one to determine if you're going to be the one that's going to advance, or if you're going to be the one to stay back in 1975, 1985. It's so interesting looking at the population, especially in America, where people are still stuck in 1960 and 1970. Even the people's looks, they look like they're throwbacks to eras from way before now. Like, I look at my husband sometimes, and he reminds me of like a Confederate soldier or a Yankee soldier, or even a musketeer. Like, if I put the different uniforms on from the different eras of the different wars, he would blend in so easily because he has a lot of Scotch, Irish, Germanic descent in him. And then you're looking at the old photos from Civil War and all of that, and Revolutionary War. I'm just like, dude, Jason, you look exactly like someone would look like way back when. Sugar. And so we do have to evolve the population. We do have to get them up to a certain level. And that means that, do we live in 1985 still? I mean, sometimes the music I listen to is all throwback, but those are memories inside of me that I like to remember because I'm in the present. I don't really listen to current music today, so it's a nice feeling to listen to old music. But then that's one side of me that appreciates the past and past artists and all of that, and those feelings of what I grew up with, but then also living in the present, also living for the future and developing the present and the future simultaneously as I'm enjoying the past. And that is something that is lost on a lot of people who want to be cured, because they're living in their 1985, 1970 era. Okay, they might be like, oh yeah, I'm living in the present, but they're in their cannabis, keeping themselves at a certain level in a cured state. That's the dangers of drugs and cures, is that you don't evolve and you're living in the past, but then the past is going to catch up with you and it's going to try to thrust you in the present, and there's nothing to you and you can't even take in information in body, mind, and spirit. Then that data will make you supernova, which you're seeing right now. People who are elderly, who are living in the past, because they're not evolving, they're not taking on substance and new information, they're supernovaing. And so that died suddenly group is a representation of those still living in the past, that they have not evolved to the new information. And people are not ready to evolve, but you can't force a population to evolve voluntarily. And so you're going to have to bring it on, and it might have to be sudden. If you can survive any kind of event that forces you to go into the present and in the future, that's like you walking through a time capsule and you were able to withstand all the different, process modifications as you're walking through the time capsule. When you're getting beamed up to the ship, right, in Star Trek, and you're able to withstand that whole transmogrification and whatever, and still be able to beam yourself from Earth into that spaceship and handle that process, that journey, that really quick journey, that means you had enough in you to deal with that energy conversion. Because when you're constantly converting energy all the time, constantly, you're losing it. And so as you're losing energy, you have to then keep refeeding it or gaining more energy, more than you're losing. Because if you're losing more than you're gaining, then obviously you're going to die. So you have to gain more than you're losing. And that is, well, losing more than you're gaining is triggering the 3 laws of thermodynamics. Okay, is there an actual law for negentropy versus entropy? No, because we have not discovered that yet. We've only been learning that we're losing more energy that we're gaining over a period of time. And the medical holistic system tries to manage that process. But obviously, when the petri dish is really at a deficit or in deficit, they can't do too much with someone who has lost so much substance that there's nothing left to cure, there's nothing left to take out, there's nothing left to go and do whatever. People don't want to eat and feel the pain of bringing up the pressure. And so there is nothing left for them. Really, when you think about it, that's why then they're left to palliative care and then the whole end of life scenario. And that's the past catching up with the present. When you're in hospice, it's like you either fucking feel the pain of the future and the present, or you just stay stuck in the past and die with the past. And that's crazy because we have people, again, who are in the past, are living in the future and the present. And they're dinosaurs. They're not surviving this atmosphere. And so all I'm trying to say is that for you to survive this atmosphere, you have to face every single thing that you have. You have to face the frequencies. You must change the way you do things. And you got to stay away from the antibiotics. The antibiotics in this environment are going to destroy you faster than they did 20, 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Okay? That's why you see the pictures of people in the 1950s look like they're relatively balanced because, yeah, there were antibiotics, but they also came on the heels of a pandemic of 1918. Okay? So you have the 1918 pandemic, Spanish flu, that just swept across the whole fucking world. So all the old dinosaurs of that time died off. Then the new prototypes came up and they were relatively balanced until more innovation was done on them from 1950, 40, 30, all the way up to 1970. And then there was issues, of course, and that's where all the sanitariums, well, I would say they were first invented in 1960. No, they had sanitariums in the 1800s. There's been so many experiments done on humans so we could figure out the best type of human, the best scenario. It's not pretty. Let me tell you, the human history is not pretty at all. It sucks. And some parts of it are amazing. And we don't want to stay too long in the dark side of history. We got to be able to look at the light side of history too and understand those both need to exist together. But it's painful, yes. And the poor queen, the queen and her history is racked with greatness, right? And then also with a lot of darkness. And countries and people that were colonized by some of the mean, English redcoats, they're going to have a history of remembering their ancestors suffering from the hands of those. But remember, those people have died. Okay, but now we know the queen and all of her consorts did some crazy stuff that I can't substantiate. But, but that's just like with my parents, It's like, do I focus on all the dark stuff, or do I say, look at the outcome. Look at the outcome of today. Okay, nothing's going to be beautiful and pretty and perfect. I mean, Harry and Meghan Markle have their own issues with the stuff, and they're going to have to figure out how to integrate with their brother and sister-in-law or sister-in-law and brother, whatever. And they have their own stuff. They just happen to have more money, but they're dealing with the same human shit that we're dealing with. And so it's just a constant evolution. And when you're constantly evolving, there's going to be shit in the background that you're going to have to remember. It's going to suck. And you're going to scream and cry and be upset. But then you have to move on. You really have to move on. And that's ultimately what the JJ world is. It's about purging without destroying yourself. And it's taking on new memories and developing the future. And just hope to God that you survive all the different craziness that goes on out there, because we're 7.9 billion and climbing, when they're projecting 12.9 billion sometime in the future. A lot of it's going to come out of Africa because they're going to go through their own upgrades and growing pains and innovation and antibiotic use and all the therapies, okay, you know they're going to go through some hell over there in Africa and all the third world countries. And so us as the first world that are going through our growing pains, have gone through them, still going through them, we're heads and shoulders further as far as evolution when it comes to dealing with this stuff than a lot of people out there. And so they're going to look at us as we're falling, the West is falling, America's falling. No, we finally figured out the best scenario. We've gone through our growing pains. We're finally mature. Some of us are going to be, recycled back to the universe. But a lot of us have been matured, and then we're going to be the new leaders of the world when you think about it. Even though Africa and all the different third world countries thinking that we're falling, no, we're finally realizing some shit, and we're getting our stuff together. But you guys have still yet to grow up, because you were still stuck in your tribalistic ways of doing stuff, fighting each other, playing those games, living from baser level instincts, okay? And now you're going to have to mature and evolve. You're going to have to face the pain of your own predisposed issues of history that is dark, and you're going to come to terms with that. And that's difficult when children come to terms with the dark history of their own world, and they're like 40 or 50 years old. And not everybody survives the memories. That's the thing when you have to realize with the whole JJ world, it brings up memories. But you have to keep feeding those memories. You have to keep feeding those little beasts. You have to keep and then purging them. Feed and purge without taking away substance. Okay? And again, the world is not going to survive the horrible memories of human history. But some of you will if you understand that you have to keep facing it. And it's dark. You saw what I went through. That's just a very tip of the iceberg. I'm telling you, people have gone through worse shit than I've gone through. And they have to bring that shit up, and they won't survive. When you think about how much suffering and how much evilness that has been out there, you see stories on Facebook. And you're asking them how to go face those memories. People are like, screw you. I'd rather be stuck in my fantasy world under the influence than face those horrible memories and come to terms with it. Not forgive anyone, but never forget. But also move on. And if I hadn't faced memories I have doing this whole confessional on Facebook, which is a Freudian thing, it's not a Jungian thing. I'm not taking on archetypes and living in that fantasy world. No, I faced every single fucking dark little history without destroying somebody else, without being too salacious, without completely just tearing down, the world out there. I had to face my own dark human history. And so some of you will do that in your own ways. Some of you will survive it and move on. Others of you will not survive facing your own history because it's so traumatic. It is so traumatic. And that is what the deal is. That's why you don't see people taking on the JJ readily, because they have a lot of dark, not even just psychologically or events that happen, but they have a lot of disease with them that is very painful, like extremely painful. And so, I hope for a lot of people that they can take it on and face it and do it. Not everybody can, and I've projected those expectations on people that may not be able to do that because of how dark human history has been, through wars, through who knows what they went through as a child or even as a young adult, and even physiologically what kind of shit they went through. And so it's just offering this as an opportunity and saying that it's going to be difficult. It's as difficult as facing slavery in America. When you're watching movies of what they did to the poor slaves, like watching the Holocaust movies. Some people's history is that dark, what they had to endure from somebody. Okay? That's what people are facing. And so I get it. That's why now I'm kind of keeping, to my own Facebook, and I'm not trying to sell this to anyone. There is no fucking way that you can sell this type of evolution. That's why I don't want people to write any positive testimonies about it, because yes, at some point, if you can handle the energy and handle your memories and all that stuff, you'll have an amazing life. You're seeing the example of me. Doesn't mean that what I'm doing is gonna be what you're gonna experience. It might, but my history is a little bit different than other people's history. So you can't compare my situation to your situation. You just have to know what you have to face, and your family knows what you're facing, because they know some of your predisposed issues. They don't try to know everything about you, because nobody tells everything to their kids or to their family members. But when it comes to predisposed issues and heart attacks and strokes and aneurysms and lung issues and surgeries that were really aggressive, I mean, that's a lot for a family to endure and watch someone go through. So you have to be very careful how you characterize your process, because I'm telling you, when you're out there wailing on Facebook about all the issues that you're dealing with, and they're like, what the fuck are you doing? Then you have pinned yourself in a corner where someone's going to come in, like a state or something, because they think that you're harming yourself, or that you're who knows what. And if someone else has power of attorney over your situation, they can go and commit you if they want to. That's why you have to really be very careful how you characterize your healing process. Because, yes, I mean, there are children that have power of attorney over their parents. Even though the parents are living by themselves, their children are looking after them, looking after their estate, looking after everything. And if you're not characterizing your process and they don't understand it, yeah, somebody will come in. What is it? And Girl Interrupted, the warden makes house calls. Okay? So you really got to be careful on everything. And I'm not trying to say hide everything and be like that, but I'm just saying, be smart about this. This whole transition from the old world to the new world is not going to be easy. And this is not for everybody. But there are a certain small few of you that I can see already on my Facebook, Odd and John and a few others, Tanya and some other people that I'm not going to name everybody, okay? So don't think I'm leaving you out. But you just happen to be right there in my vision right now. There's a handful of you that can handle this process, that you have set your life up for it, that you have the intellectual awareness, you have the physical capability, and you have a little bit of support of your immediate people. And my dad just gave me, oh, okay, John, okay. Okay, so you have the support of the immediate people around you that you can go through this process and they won't freak the fuck out. And thank God your dad that gave you power of attorney. So if he decides to do something and needs to do whatever, then that's great. You're not going to stop him. You'll support him. Let me tell you, John, if you were somebody else and your dad wanted to do this, most likely it's not going to happen. They would keep their father and mother in a home or under some kind of doctor's care. But remember, like you said, your dad is to make his own choices. And that's great that he gave you power of attorney, because now he has a lot of freedom to do what he wants. Doesn't mean he's going to do the JJs. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that that he has that freedom. But not many people do that have their children looking after everything. Okay? And so you got to really be careful how you characterize that. That's why earlier on in the JJ world, in the group, I didn't want people fucking talking smack about the JJs. I want them to talk about their stuff, but I want them to characterize it. And it was hard for me to articulate, because people are like, well, why are you deleting, posts and comments and this and that? Why are you hiding all this stuff that's going on? I'm not hiding it. It's just that people were not characterizing it in a way that wasn't going to scare the fuck out of people. But I guess at that point in time, no one really knew how to characterize symptoms back then. It was just like, throw up and here's my shit, literally. We were showing each other shit. And it was just like, it was just fucking chaos. I'm so happy we're not back then. I am so happy we finally evolved from that point. But now, if you're going to talk about your symptoms, you have to understand that you have to characterize them in an intellectual, mature way that also is aware that if you wanted to, yes, that if it's that bad, you'll go to the doctor. If it's that bad, you'll take whatever it is. That you're not going to get off your drugs and your meds like cold turkey. It's going to be a transition process that you and your doctor and your family, if they're involved, are all going to talk about and discuss what is the best scenario. Okay, so I've even evolved from even how I said, oh yeah, take a gallon a day and get off your meds. And that was me just jumping into the mix and just, going from one extreme to the other, because I was suffering so much and I found relief, and I wanted to give everybody else that, but that wasn't, my situation couldn't compare to theirs. And so everything is a transition process, and it does take time, and some people's situations are a lot more aggressive than others, and it'll be a slower process versus jumping in with both feet, because I didn't have as many issues as some of you have. And so everything is going to take time, and not everyone's going to survive it, and it's not for everybody. But you have to know intellectually what's going on, and then you have to really look at your body physically. Can you actually handle this process? And do you have the buy-in of the people around you that love you, that care about you, that are also in your life? Okay? And that you have to factor in all of that. And if you can't factor, if you don't get the buy-in of your friends and family who do look after you, yeah, you might as well just stay in that world and don't even bother, because it'll be more of a headache than anything else. And you don't need any more of that shit if you're going to be healing. Because let me tell you, the healing process and the purging process is already bad enough. You don't want people around you freaking out. Okay? So now, I'll be introducing, yes, I'm writing now about the Rosicrucians. I talk about the Illuminati, which is its own chapter in my book. So that's like one chapter goes like, it says, oh no, it's the Illuminati. And I do talk a little bit about the background of people's perceptions of the Illuminati. But like anything, it's just naming, an antibiotic 3 different names, and names change over time. And so now I'm going into the world of the Rosicrucians, and I'm not going into so deep in the Greek pantheon or the Sumerian pantheon, because that's all allegory. Just like the Bible, it's all allegory. And so then that really makes the writing about in this book so much easier, as I'm scaling down the amount of information that are the rabbit holes that are in college and all the universities, and you're going down the rabbit holes of Greek mythology and Western civilization and all the rise and falling of the Chinese dynasties and or the Roman and the Greco-Roman days and the Sumerian pantheon days and all of the different cultures. That's just getting lost in the rabbit holes, and people don't come up for air, and they get asphyxiated and they die in those rabbit holes. Okay, so what are you going to do with the history degree of Western civilization? Curate a museum, or take that information and use it as a jumping off point for human evolution? Use it as like, oh shit, okay, Western civilization, a lot of it's allegory, because there are humans that do go through a process and they have to talk about it. But how do you talk about biology and social sciences or political history, and how do you talk about it in a way that gets you to understand biologically what goes on during that time of rise and fall of civilizations? And you have Dante's Inferno and the allegory so then that's where all the religions get born. Okay? And then all the offshoots of the religions. And so then I don't have to go into the whole freaking story of Adam and Eve and Adam and Steve and all that stuff, okay? Because again, universities do a lot of human experimentation. Diversity is when you bring in antibiotics and different types of data to a human body and biology, and then you do, different programming, kinetic energy, programming people, stuff that happened in the Roman days, where there is, same sex or different sex. Yeah, that's been around for centuries. Any of these things that we see today is not new. People assimilate. Like I said last night, be careful who you hang out with, because you will assimilate to them. And you won't even know it. Maybe, yes, you'll assimilate psychologically, but then also biologically. That's why certain people look the same when they hang out with certain people or practice certain types of identities. They have a very unique look about them that shows that they're in that specific circle. Okay? And some get other types of things that may make them look a little bit different than the circle of people they hang out with but that's all plastic surgery and hormone manipulation. But the groups out there, the homogenized groups, yeah, you will assimilate if you hang out psychologically with people and you're in your groups on Facebook, psychologically feeding your mind certain things. But then when you go physically hang out with people on a constant basis, you will assimilate biologically to them and then take on all their therapies. Okay? And that's where then people don't realize that the reason why they're not getting that evolutionary next level is because they're so homogenized that it's going to take even more aggressive frequency and aggressive virus to wake them up out of that homogenized state, that homeostatic state. Okay, and I don't want people being surprised, so that's why I'm saying, when you stay home more than not, then you get homogenized to this environment. And then when you go out there, somebody from wherever, or even a small group of people that you haven't seen in a while, they will then upgrade you. And that's a welcome thing. But then you stay out of that group and you just hang out, do your thing, take care of yourself, and go through that process and go through the purging process and the generation process, and then and do what you got to do, and then periodically put yourself out there again to bring in something new to upgrade you. And that's the JJ world. But when you're out there in a homogenized assimilation state, then you won't feel stuff until something else more aggressive. So you'll be incubating, and taking on the therapies. They'll be attacking your ability to evolve. Okay? And so the reverse of actually staying home more than not and being more autonomous is going to fare you in good stead, or it's going to bring you, or it's going to, I don't know. It's going to hold you in good stead. That's what I'm saying. When you're home more than not, and then you bring in the evolution. And it's going to be aggressive for some of you because you haven't actually woken up the demons within. You just put them to sleep with all the different drugs and therapies and stuff. And so the whole JJ world is completely the opposite of the mainstream society out there. That's why it's a transition process. That's why we're not popular. Okay? Because people out there want to be out there with their friends and family. That's what I'm saying. You look at my JJ crowd that used to belong to me a couple years ago. They've given up. I understand. It's too hard to say no to the parties out there. When you're on a party boat or you're hanging out with a bunch of your peers that are already in the old world, that are waiting to supernova at whatever point, it's difficult to say, okay, husband, I'm going to stay home now. I'm not going to go on that party boat or that trip or that cruise or whatever. I know how difficult the draw is to assimilate to the people that you've been around for years. I'm saying the JJ world is not for everybody. It is not. People will give up. They'll give up at some point because the draw of being in the mainstream world and partying and hanging out and having that lifestyle is strong. Okay? And so I understand this. That's why I don't get mad at anyone anymore. I know what you're dealing with. I'm a bit more empathetic to the peer pressure because I understand how difficult it is to pull yourself away from your grandkids, pull yourself away from your social circles. Why would you pull yourself away from your grandkids? Well, here, it's not that you pull yourself away, but yeah, that's a hard one. Because what exactly do you get out of hanging out with grandchildren? Are you giving them new information so they can deal with it? And are the parents, are you just getting to know them for the 5 or 10 years or however long that they have on this earth in this dynamic environment, knowing what you're dealing with and knowing what your kids are dealing with and knowing what your grandkids are going to be facing? That is a culture thing that I know that does sting to some people who love their grandkids. And so, okay, so I got to watch on that because, yeah, not that I have to watch, but I understand why people do hang out a lot with their grandkids and their families and okay, all right. And so the JJ world is a multifaceted type of ideology, multifaceted type of experience, and it's not just one rabbit hole or one area that you experience. There's a whole lot more to the JJ world than meets the eye when you think about it. There's a whole lot more. And people are discovering that little by little. I just hope that a lot of you survive it. The process of discovering. All right. So anyways, I'm going to go and write and watch my dog for a second. Drink my coffee. I feel great. Yeah, I feel comfortable. I feel great. I feel just like, wow, that I can't beat this. This is exactly where I want to be right now in this moment in time. This is everything I've worked for. Everything I've worked for. And that is hard. That's hard to say, and it's a constant evolution, and I know what to expect. I know my own alimentary canal, the foods that I eat, the foods that I ate last night. Ooh, I had to purge that out, but it was great. I can't complain. Okay. And this is where I want you guys to be at some point. Some of you have a ways to go, and I understand that. But this is where I want you guys to be at some point, where you're not just satisfied, but you are just like, wow, this is exactly where I want to be. All right. Bye.